Maximum R&B poster, just stuff like that. The Who grabbed me instantly. Like I when I first heard Who's Next, I thought it was like the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. The other thing, I guess, obviously to you now that you know me, but Bowie and Lou Reed and Mott the Hoople, like that sort of collection of artists whose musical paths interwove, through Bowie mostly, but Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory and those things were just phenomenal to me. Like I couldn't get enough of it.
I still have Lou and Bowie like right at the top for me,
Yeah,
right up there with Queen,
yeah, yeah,
Ian
absolutely.
Hunter. Ian Hunter, you mentioned, bought the Hoople as
Oh,
well.
oh my God. Yeah, like that music was great. And it was it connected me to my sister, but it also then there were moments when like, all right, I bought Quadrophenia. Like I didn't get it. Like this is my music now. And then she worked at BCN for a while as a volunteer. And so, obviously then like Jay Giles and Aerosmith and all those Boston bands sort of came into that sort of musical universe that we were inhabiting. And a, a different influence, but no, not much less of an influence to sort of like hear that music. And then Beth, again, I love all my sisters. Beth's not my favorite, but then then Beth would like get tickets, and she like took me to see shows. So like
Wow.
I went and saw Aerosmith in like 1973. I saw Jay Giles. I saw I actually saw Aerosmith open for Sha Na Na at Suffolk Downs. And
Was that your first concert?
my first concert was for my birthday. She took me to concerts on the Common to see Rory Gallagher open up for Fleetwood Mac,
Wow.
who was opening up for Savoy Brown.
Wow. Heavy
It was,
British blues,
and I just turned 12, and
Irish.
I was just like so overwhelmed by the whole thing, and like probably the first time I ever smelled weed, and I was just like, "What is going on, man?" But it was amazing. Yeah,
Well, that's a good one. Jethro Tull was my first
that's great.
concert.
God, yeah.
Um, what about playing? Did you start playing at an early age and was bass first, or did you play guitar first?
So I didn't play that early on, but I was in theater. I was in musical theater as a kid. I went to a parochial school with like 100 kids in it, nuns and a couple of lay teachers. And um, at some point, one of our friends was like, "We should put on a play." So we are like, "Sure, let's put on a play." So they did a version of Godspell when I was in like sixth grade, and like the nuns were like, "This is blasphemous," But like we did it, and then next year, I think we did Fiddler on the Roof, which I thought was an interesting choice for a Catholic school. And then stuff like that. So I was doing that kind of stuff, performing and like, getting my bearings on stage. My sister Beth, again, took guitar lessons. So there's always a guitar in her room. And she'd show me some stuff, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I found my thing. I still really feel like my thing is singing more than playing, but I did start to play, and I was like 14, 15. There was a kid down the street, Tommy Padavina, who I actually just bumped into, who had a band in his parents' basement. They'd practice, and I don't know if they ever played. And so the rest, some of us would go and hang out like outside, or maybe they'd let us in once in a while to watch them practice. And they were playing like Blue Oyster Cult and Grateful Dead and stuff like that. And I was like, I play guitar, and the band, of course, had like six guitar players and a drummer, and and he goes, "Well, we don't have a bass player, so if you play the bass, you can be in the band." So I was like,
Mhm.
"Fine, I'm a bass player." So he gave me a bass, he gave me an amp, I practiced, and we sort of did that for a while. It
Wow,
was a
how
blast.
old were you when that happened?
I was uh I was probably 14,
Wow.
15, maybe. The guys were a couple years older than me, but yeah, playing Eagle songs and 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 Blue Oyster Cult songs. And actually, I will say the first time I ever sang a song in a band was with this guy Tommy. A couple of years later, the band had changed, and I was just a singer at that point. And his dad was a doctor and ran a nursing home in Braintree. And the first gig I ever played was playing in this nursing home on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah. And the very first song we played was All the Way from Memphis by Martha Hoople. And like, you just seen these poor patients at this assisted living facility were just like, what are you guys doing? Like this,
Wow. What
but
was
that
it?
was
What was the name of that band?
I think the band was called Skylar Rose. I think it was some Grateful Dead reference or something, but yeah, it was yeah. And at that point I had already started to like really listening to more. I guess I was a little older. I was maybe 16 or 17, but um, yeah, I think I maybe had already seen the Cars, so maybe I was 17, but
So
yeah.
did you know at that point that you wanted to be a musician? Was that your calling?
I did, but in the sort of private, secret way that a lot of kids who grow up in suburban middle class life think like, yeah, how does that work? Like, like how do these guys do it? And I think you have to, as you probably remember at that time, like I saw pictures in Cream magazine. I saw the picture on the back
Yeah.
of the album cover, and maybe if it was a gatefold, I saw some other pictures. Um, but it seemed so like, and especially listening to like a lot of British bands, it just you just think like, how does this ever happen? Like, you must just be magic, or you have to be so lucky, or you have to know somebody. So I think, although I think in my heart I knew I wanted to do it, I don't think I knew if there was really a pathway to do it. I guess starting to play with these guys, and then I played with some other friends in high school and cover bands, and you start to get a sense of it. But it's like, yeah, we're playing at a pub in Quincy on a Saturday night in front of 30 people. Like, we weren't writing songs or anything. So I think I didn't know what the path would be. So I went to Emerson after high school as a
Ooh.
theater major. But by then I had seen the path, and much to my parents' dismay, I was like, look, I don't want to do this. I know what I want to do. Like, I'm gonna quit school and play music. Um, and that's because, again, my sister Beth, my fourth favorite sister, um, she she started taking me to the Rat and the Paradise and Cantones, and like I saw the Cars play at the Rat. They'd play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights,
So that was like
and
77 around that time?
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and and then I saw the Nervous Eaters and the Real Kids, and I was like, you can be a band this good, and like you can go see them in Boston, and like they're writing songs, and Rick Hart putting out records, and then of course I saw the Hoods and Mission of Burma, and it was just like, you know what, like you can do it. There's a path. You just have to connect with the right people and work your ass off. But like, so that was eye opening, really mind altering.
Did you actually quit school because you have a law degree now? So you obviously did you stay in school
No, so I
anyways?
I I went to Emerson for about a year and a half, and then I stopped. And of course, my mother was convinced that I was going to die a heroin addict in a gutter. But once they saw how serious I was, and then they'd come occasionally to see me play, they got behind it. And so I stopped then. After the Hoods stopped playing, I went back and got my BA, and then went right to law school after that. So I
Oh, so
went
that
back to
was the 90s. Yeah.
I went to school in '93 to '99, basically.
Okay, as far as I know, and I didn't know about these other bands, the Paytons I always thought was your first band. Is that your first like original band?
That's right. That's the first band that I played other than at like a backyard party or a little pub in Quincy. That was the first band that like played the Rat and wrote songs and tried to make its way in the music scene.
What was that? Tell me about the Paytons because I don't really know much about them.
It's funny. I every once in a while I think about it. And I'm still connected with a couple of the guys. We saw each other a few years ago. We all got together and just played it in someone's backyard. But I feel like through Beth, I had other friends who knew these guys who were looking for a bass player. And so I went and auditioned. And I remember I was so mod, like, and I think I even had like a Beatles pin on my bass strap. And, but that's what they were into. We were like very much Britpop. We played a bunch of covers to start. like Herman's Hermits and all this kind of stuff, and then began writing songs. It's funny. Someone sent me a video the other day from V66. Do you remember V66?
I
They
do,
put
I do.
a video of us playing a song. I'm wearing like skin tight red corduroys, yellow beetle boots, some ridiculous haircut. Like we were just very into the look. Not a great band, although I think the players are really good. Um, and we probably played for, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years maybe in the scene. But that's how I met Dave, because we used to open for them all the time.
The Peyton's open for the neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Let me just take a step back here. You
Yeah.
mentioned The Who as one of your really early influences. Did you like, was it Entwistle? I mean, were you influenced by him as a bass player?
No, I think as a general rule for me, I'm really about the songs. Like
Uh,
I like people like I don't like such and such genre of music. I don't like this or that. I'm like, if it's a good song, like I give anybody credit for writing a good song. And for me, like I loved that early Who stuff, Can't Explain and Pictures of Lily and all that stuff. I mean, it's just like to me, I liked it more than I liked the Beatles or the Stones. I just thought the songs were cool, the energy was great. And when I heard Tommy and then Who's Next, it was just like, oh my God, like the songwriting is just brilliant. I don't think I sort of dug into it until I started playing bass a little bit more. And people would just be like, listen to that bass part. And I'm like, oh, that's the bass player. Like, what the hell is he doing? Like, it was just so magnificent and huge. So it was more the songs at first, I think, that drew me in. But certainly then as you start to play, you realize like, oh my God, like that guy's a great bass player. Townsend's an amazing guitar player. Moon is Moon, like you start to then you start. I think I started to dig into the music, the musicianship a little bit more.
it doesn't surprise me that you're a fan of The Who at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
So you mentioned that you met Dave Minahan, and imagine Michael Quaglia also
yeah,
when you were opening for them. Um, can you talk about how you ended up playing with those guys? How did that all come together?
yeah. So we played a bunch, and even at that time, 78, 79, 80, Dave was the star. Like
Yeah.
and he's a super nice guy, and I think we became friends in the way that we all became friends back then. I was looking at the amazing list of guests you've had on the show, Steve, and I'm like, oh, Cam Acklin and Nat Freedberg and all these guys that like, and Peter Prescott and Roger. And it's like all these guys that like I've known since I was like my son's age. Like I've known these guys for 40 years or something. But those relationships tend to be transient. Like you hang out in the dressing room before a show, and maybe like you someone jumps up on stage and plays a song or something together. But it's not like I know Clint Conley. We know each other. When we see each other, we say hello, but like we don't know each other's lives. So Dave was great, and we were friends, and I was definitely friends with Mike too. Mike and I seemed more like we were just kind of regular guys, and Dave seemed like, oh, he's Dave, Um, we became friends, and then I did get up and play a song with them once or twice. Um, on guitar. He was contemplating, I think, even at that point, maybe adding a second guitar, and we'd become good friends, and they liked my voice and my energy, and then we all clearly had a huge um, swath of musical influences that we shared. We all grew up listening to the same sort of rock stations, but we also loved all the bands we talked about, Bowie and the Who and Mott the Hoople. So I played with them a few times, and it didn't really go anywhere. And I'm kind of glad in a way because I always thought the band should have been a three-piece and never changed. But we kept in touch, and then I started playing with Richie Parsons from Natural Acts
Right.
in the Future Dads, and I'd still go see the Hoods whenever I could. I mean, I've probably seen the Hoods as much as any band I've ever seen, even exclusive of the shows I played with them. We know Dave and I stayed in touch the way we could back then, like basically by seeing each other. We didn't have text messaging and all that wonderful stuff. Um, And they, after John Hartcorn left, they had Tim Green playing bass for
Yeah.
a brief period of time, and they sort of flirted with that Gang of Four kind of funkier set of music. Um, and then Tim left, and I only met Tim once or twice. He's a super nice guy. And they were looking for a bass player, and Dave was like, would you have any interest in coming down and playing? And that was like 82, late 81, early 82. So I went down to the basement in his parents' house in Upton where he still lived. I mean, his parents were out of the house by then, but and he and Mike and I started playing. It's like I could play Flavors and Prettiest Girl and She's So Good and No Place Like Home in my sleep, even though I'd never played them with the band. And so it wasn't hard. It wasn't like, oh, teach me a song. It's like, you want to play a set? Well, you play tonight. Let's get a gig. I could play. And the other thing I think um, that was part of that was that I think Mike really wanted to play the older songs again. Like I think he was less enamored of the path the band had sort of veered onto when Tim was in the band, and so like Mike was like, "Great, let's go play those songs, those great songs," and we certainly played songs from that period too, which are all. I mean, Dave's a great songwriter, Electricity and all those songs, but yeah, that's it. Just sort of it was organic. It took a little while, I guess, but that's the way things happen sometimes. We knew each other, and when the moment struck, I was there, and they needed a bass player.
A record that not a lot of people talk about is the Fire Is Coming EP. Were those songs coming together at that time?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the song list. I think that there were one or two of those songs that had been part of the late John Tim era, but then a bunch of them Dave wrote after we started playing together. And yeah, that's a good record. There's a lot of good songs on that record.
Do you remember making that record?
I do because it was really the first time I'd been, I'd made a couple of singles with the Paytons, and I think the Unnatural Acts made a single and an EP. Um, this was the first time it was like, okay, we're going to make a bigger record. There's going to be more songs on it, and right or wrong at the time, I thought like, yeah, this is the Hoods. Like this could be a stepping stone to something, or like at least more people probably pay attention to it out of the gate. I remember recording it. We recorded. There was a studio above what used to be Wurlitzer's on the corner of Mass Ave and Newbury Street. We recorded a bunch of stuff there. Um, we were pretty tight. We've been playing a bunch. That was one good thing about the Hoods. Is like we played so much that when we got a chance to go in the studio, we knew the songs. So I think it was more like just exciting to be making the record than like I wasn't nervous. It was just like this is going to be great. Making a neighborhoods record.
What about those gigs, the early gigs with the band? What do you remember about those when you were in the band?
It's funny, someone just sent me an MP3 of if it wasn't the first show, it was close. It was in the first two or three shows. We played out the Blue Wall at UMass Amherst.
Yeah.
And I don't know who recorded it, and I don't know how it survived 40 years, but someone sent it to me. And there were a couple songs on there that I'm like, if you asked me to play this song today, I don't even remember the songs. But there was a lot of it that was really great. And I think, I mean, John Hartcorn was a great bass player. Tim Green was an amazing bass player. I think that I was a good enough bass player, but more of a kindred spirit. So I always felt like our lineup was just sort of more. I don't know. I just felt like we were supposed to play together. That's how it always felt to me. So those early gigs were great, and also like I didn't never played in front of that many people most of the time, and it was I'd play twice a month maybe most of the time. These guys were playing 10, 15 times a month. It was like, this is amazing. Like, would go
Did
to
you,
Providence and play in front of a few hundred people. It was great.
aside from New England, did you go on the road or was that not until the High Hard one?
I think that I think we went to New York once or twice, but mostly we were, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Hartford kind of thing. So we didn't start going touring until High Hard One.
When I think of that era, the song that always comes to mind is Arrogance because it just feels like the neighborhood song during the High Hard One era. Do you remember when that record started coming together and then you decided to make the record?
I do. I mean, I think that that record is probably the um, the broadest expanse of neighborhoods music because like Arrogance was a song they played that song with John. I mean, they've been playing that song for years when we recorded it. And then we had some new songs, and I get a song on the record, and like I think that I remember we recorded with Phil down in Normandy, and I remember thinking
Phil
like,
Green.
yeah, with Phil Green, and I just remember thinking like, yeah, this seems a little more what I imagined making a record felt like. Like we booked the studio for a week or whatever, you know, and we were there all the time, and I think we slept upstairs for some of it, and it was like it wasn't just like three guys who scraped together their newspaper money to pay for a couple of hours of studio time. I was like, we're making a record now, like, and I think all the records have their place, and you know, especially personally memories surrounding the records. But you know, I don't think the record sounded that great. But you know, in that record, in retrospect, people say, "Oh, it sounds too heavy metal." But like, it sounded like a real record to me. Like you could hear all the instruments, and it was big, and there were harmonies, and like I thought it was a great record.
It was a top 20 college radio record.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know, because when we worked with you guys at Enigma, that was the one thing that really stuck out with the band is college radio loved you guys at
yeah,
that point.
yeah.
I had only seen you with the band maybe two or three times until you came to California and you played at Club Lingerie. Do you
Yeah.
remember that show at Club Lingerie?
I do. I do. It was like, you know, again, like playing it at CB's, playing it at the 930 Club in DC, like those like playing at the Club Lingerie. It's like, okay, like I've wanted to do this gig since I was 15 years old. Like, so it was very cool to do that. It was a great experience. And I also forgot like how many transplanted Bostonian folks out there. So it was a little bit like, you know, we saw a lot of old faces that I hadn't seen in a while. And one of my sisters was living out there at the time. So yeah, that was a great experience. And whatever, we were on the road, like we're like legit on the road, like touring for a month. And that was to get up on stage in Los Angeles and play songs was amazing.
That
Really
was a
amazing.
fabulous show, man.
Yeah.
I was talking to Warren Zanes recently about when the Del
Yeah.
Fuegos played at Club Lingerie, and Michael Whitaker's name came up, Spaceman, because that was the night I met him. I had never met him in Boston, but I met him at the Hood show at Lingerie because
God, Michael.
Dave dedicated a song to him that night. Because I think you're the only person I ever gave a copy of that tape to. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it cut off in the middle of
Yeah.
Prettiest Girl.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I listened to your interview with Warren, and he's another one of those guys. It's like we've known each other since we were, you know, teenagers, early 20s. And like I have his Tom Petty book on my bookshelf. It's like it's crazy. Like the paths people have followed and the friends that we've made through this process. It's great.
You spent a lot of time talking about Beth earlier in the interview. Didn't Nancy do the artwork for the Reptile Men? Am I right about that?
She did. Nancy did that, and she's out in LA now. Three of my sisters live in LA now, but she did that for us back then. The infamous gatefold.
Yeah, it brings back many memories for
Yeah,
me.
doesn't it?
Told the story too many times. Not going to tell it
It's
again.
really.
But
I'll just say that a very good friend of mine who I met when I went back to school, and I lived with for a little while when we were in law school, texted me yesterday, and we go see music when we can together, and we've been very good friends. He was in a music store in Brookline, and he sent me a picture of the High Hard One. I know the Reptile Men album cover, and he's like, "If I buy this, how much money do you get?" I'm like, "Nothing. I get a warm, fuzzy feeling." And he was like then just giving me shit about the. He's like, "What were you wearing? Like, what's the denim on denim look you get going there?" I was like, "You know what? It was 19, you know." So
Well, it's funny, but I very rarely were given any points on any records in my whole industry. But I did have 1 point on that record, but I never even made a nickel. That
yeah,
doesn't mean it's not a great record,
no,
right?
no, no,
It's a
no. Yep.
fantastic record.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of money on the artwork and everything, basically.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through the entire neighborhood story with you because we've done that before, but I just wanted to ask you if you could talk about perhaps some of your most memorable. We mentioned the lingerie. What were some of your other most memorable gigs with with the neighborhoods before the band reformed with John Lynch?
I will say that the first time we got gigs like in North Carolina and South Carolina on our first sort of real, at least East Coast swing kind of tours. And I remember thinking like, who is going to come see us in Columbia, South Carolina? And I don't think I appreciated the sort of power and scope and commitment of people in college radio, like who it's their passion to go out and find new music. It's their passion to say, to their focus on music is so intense. And we had these guys who were like DJs down there who loved us and played us. And like I remember getting on stage the first time and there being a couple hundred people in a bar in South Carolina to see us play, and I'm thinking like, this doesn't seem real to me. Like this is crazy. Um, we I sometimes I look back and think of the people we play with. I mean, obviously we play with the Ramones a lot, and um, those gigs were incredibly important. But like we also get to know them a little bit. Like I remember playing like stickball with those guys in a gym at some college show that we played. Might have been in Amherst, and like Johnny just complaining about everything, and I mean obviously the stuff with Bowie is magnificently important like that. Again, Beth took me to see Bowie in 1974. Like, did you ever think in 1974 you'd play with David Bowie? No. So that stuff was great. Um, the last weekend that we played at the Rat, I just happened to be scrolling through stuff on my phone and played a couple of songs from the last Rat album. And, that was a pretty amazing weekend. And like, it was kind of cool to be able to go out on our own terms. It's kind of cool to listen to the record and hear a song start and people go like, yeah. It's like, yeah, we had people who really our music meant something to them. And I know at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And then the crazy people that you meet along the way. I remember like hanging out with Mike Mills one night and
REM.
him saying like, "Oh, I really like your bass playing." And I'm like, really? Like you have heard my bass? Like, and we play with Modern English. We play with friggin' Jefferson Starship. Like, we just did the craziest gigs. So it was a ton of fun.
I got to meet
But
a lot of people because of the neighborhoods. I remember meeting Tommy Ramone
yeah,
twice
sure.
backstage at neighborhood shows in New
Yeah.
York, and I was just like, I think you're the one who introduced me to him the
Yeah.
first time. I'm like, holy shit, that's Tommy Ramone right there. And I saw some of those Tin Machine shows too. They were fantastic, and many others. Um, do you think the ship has sailed as far as the neighborhoods go now, or do you think there'll ever be another? Because I thought for a minute at the Justine Koval show, I had a feeling when I was getting ready to go to that show, I'm like, this seems like the kind of show that there could be a hoods thing, but then it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think that I tell myself that it's not going to happen because when I allow myself to think like it could happen and it doesn't, it makes me sad because I would love to play the songs one more time. I think it would be great. And I know that I think Dave's pretty set on sort of like, I'm living this life now. This is what I'm doing. It's again funny because two or three different people this week brought the neighborhoods up to me and asked me the same question, like, "Are you guys going to play again?" And it's like, I don't know, like we'll see. And I'm more in touch with Mike now, and sometimes I think like,
Yeah.
Mike, let's get on Dave's ass and like just do one show. Like people will come. It's not going to be a failure. Like people will come see us play. We'll play for an hour and a half and then we'll be done. But like, shouldn't we play these songs one more time? Like, I'd love to play those songs one more time, you know?
Well, because of my association with the band for so long, people ask me that question all the time because I must mention the neighborhoods on at least every other show that I
Yeah.
do. It's,
Well, that's what I was saying when I was looking at the roster of all the folks you've had on. I'm like, no, I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy.
and
Yeah.
everyone always puts you guys at the top of the who's your favorite band? It's always the neighborhoods, outlets, Burma, liars. Those are the band
Right.
nervous eaters, real
Yeah.
kids. The same
Yeah.
bands over and over again, people will talk about. Um,
Sure.
did you do something with Willie Loco recently, you guys? Or did Dave or someone back?
Dave, Dave and John and Mike played with
Oh,
Willie at
John. Okay.
up at the Cut, that place in Gloucester, which unfortunately didn't make it. I guess it was a great club, but yeah, there was some. I think it was Willie's 70th birthday party or something like that.
Sorry,
They
man. It
played.
was the original. Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought I heard
yeah,
something, but I wasn't sure about that.
yeah, yeah.
Um, let's jump ahead here and talk about the Shanghai Lows because I think this is one of the best bands around right now. Can you talk about how that all started and the chemistry you have with people in the Shanghai Lows?
Sure. So I knew Jen. I've known Jen for a long time. She played with the Hoods a few times at gigs, and I knew Dan through Watts. So like I'd seen Dan play a bunch of times. We this is a long. I'll try and keep it short, but I did a Mott the Hoople cover band thing with some friends at the Lizard Lounge just over 5 years ago, and we had basically we were like a house band, and we invited up people to come sing Mott the Hoople songs. And
Wow.
among the people that came up were Dan Kopko and Jen Dangora. Um, and so we would rehearse and hang out, and we connected a little bit. And after that one-off gig, uh, they reached out to me because they said, "Look, we're putting this project together, and is there like any way you would want to play bass?" And it was just at a time where I was like, you know what? Yeah, I think it would be really fun to play in a band, and I think they're both super talented. I mean, Jen's an amazing singer, and so is
Yeah.
Dan. And so we got together with I, someone else who was playing drums, not the drummer that's in the band, not Chuck, but we got together and played some songs, and it was like the guys write great songs. I mean, they're just real crafts people and artists, and I like the vibe of like the influences. So we searched around and found a good drummer and started playing gigs. So yeah, it was great. And the chemistry's always been good. We all like each other. We all, I think, have the same sense of what we're doing. Like we're not chasing a record deal. We're not trying to go on tour. We're playing gigs. We're making music and recording songs just to release them for people to hear. But again, like we hang out in a practice space for an hour and a half and play music. We hang out backstage for 20 minutes. But we had a chance to go to Jersey in September to play with this Little Stevens Underground Garage put on a show.
Right.
He plays the Shang Hi Los a ton, so they invited us to play. So we get in a van, the five of us, and drive down to Asbury Park, and we stayed in a hotel that night, and it was like, oh, I remember this feeling of just like laughing and telling stories and listening to music, and it was really fun, and they're really wonderful people. It's been such an immense pleasure to do it, not just because I think the music's good, but like the people in the band are great.
Plus, you guys are with Lou, at Rumbar Records, and that's a great family kind of vibe.
I love Lou. Yeah, absolutely. Like he's great. He's a neighbor. I feel like I should see him more often than I do, but he's great. I think he just had a birthday too. But
Yeah, he
yeah,
did.
yeah, he's a great guy. Amazing.
I want to ask you a couple of general things about the music industry, but first, I heard that you did a gig with the regular Casanovas. Is that a new band or is that just a fun gig?
So this is part of what I was talking about. This Mott the Hoople show. This regular Casanova's band is the Mott the Hoople band. It's Billy
Oh,
LaFigian from Willie from the Boom Boom Band. It's my friend Ed Reamer on bass, me, Phil Aiken, Chris Anzalone, who's been on your show. Um, so Phil, after the Mott the Hoople gig, he's like, I wrote a bunch of songs. Would you guys want to record them? And we were like, sure. So we recorded a bunch of songs, I don't know, 3 years ago. I sang lead on all of it. I think that's all I did. I sang lead and background vocals. And we never played. And then Phil wrote another bunch of songs like a year and a half ago, and he's like, "Do you want to record these songs?" So we recorded these songs, and that bunch of songs we gigged. And I was like, "Phil, let's gig the other songs that we did 3 or 4 years ago. They're great." So he finally finished that record, put it out, and we played this gig at the Lizard Lounge about 2 weeks ago. I was jokingly on stage saying, like, it's to the people who were there, it's like, it's a good thing you're here because we're never going to play again, according to our history. But Phil said he'd like to play again. I think the record's great. There's some really amazing songs on it. And then it's got that Mott the Hoople kind of vibe to it in some of the songs. So,
That's a real all-star band right there,
oh
I
my
can tell
God.
you.
When I was doing the band introduction at the gig, I'm like, I can't believe I'm on stage with Billy Lasigian. Like, I had the Willie records in my bedroom when I was in high school. It's like he's a legend. So,
Plus,
yeah,
Chris
great
is
band.
like
Chris, all those guys. Oh my
unbelievable
God.
drummer. Can play
And
anything.
the nicest guy. Like, playing with him is just a blast. He's so musical. He's such a fun guy. Like, yeah, it's a great bunch of guys and
I
great
love
players.
going to Stereo Jax's record store in Medford, Somerville. I don't know if you've been there,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, it's great.
love it there. I'm going to ask you a couple things that I'm curious about. You've experienced a lot of shifts in the music industry from the rise of digital to streaming. How have these changes impacted the way you look at your approach to creating and sharing music? Has anything changed, or do you just do it the same way, or do you even care about this whole digital streaming part of the industry?
No, I do. I mean, I think you'd be crazy not to be aware of it, and at this point now, not to be somewhat immersed in it. And it's funny you say this because Carissa Johnson, who's a good friend
Yeah.
of mine, and has been a guest on your show, she and we used to play together at the mess around once in a while. We get up and play a couple songs, and we just had a good connection. She's just a really great person.
Yeah, she is.
Um, and we had talked like, we should find a way to make music together. And every 6 months, it's like, hey, we should find a way. Yeah, we really got to do it, man. Um, and about a month ago, she's like, look, I have a couple of ideas that I need help with, or that are not quite finished. Can I send them to you? And then maybe we can figure out a way to record a song or two, whether I just play bass or whatever. So she sent me stuff last night. She's like, here are these
Wow.
songs. Like, listen to these demos, and if you want to add a verse, if you think it needs a bridge, if you think they're terrible, whatever, just let me know. Of course, they're not gonna be terrible. She's a great songwriter, but so that part of it is like great. Like, we don't have to get in a practice space. We don't have to get in a studio. We can at least create the structure and blueprint for music by sending an email to somebody with a file attached to it. Um, the other part of it, like, I wrestle with, like, my oldest son is a guitar player, and he's starting to play with some bands, and he's trying to find his footing. I want to encourage him, and it's very hard to not just be like, look, I did it. Like, pursue your dream.
Yeah.
You'll regret not doing it if you don't do it. Um, and the music industry is just it's democratized in a way. Like, it wasn't like, we were trying to get an A&R guy from one of the 5 labels who had listened to us come to a show to maybe sign us. Now people just put music out, through their Spotify or Instagram account or YouTube, and like, every once in a while something breaks through that's
You
like,
never
oh,
know what's
God,
going to happen.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's a different pressure for these artists now, because like, anybody with a cell phone can make a record, kind of, like, I think it opens up possibilities, but it's also really challenging. So
That was really nice breaking news about you and Carissa. I think you guys are both fantastic. I can hardly wait to see what you come up with there.
absolutely, it's great.
I saw her with the Nervous Eaters this summer at that rat show out in the Medfield. I never
Oh
even
yeah,
heard of Medfield, but
I
I
know.
was there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, After all these years, I guess I think I know the answer to this question. You still find the same joy and excitement when you go? Because I saw you not too long ago at the Burn, and you were totally into it. Do you feel like you could just keep doing live shows forever?
It's funny. I think about that all the time, Steve, and sometimes I think like, well, what am I doing? Like, I've proved my point. I played a bunch of shows. I played with people. I've made records, and then I get up on stage, and it's like, it's not it's not a conscious thing. It's just like, that's home. That's where you feel the most like myself in some way. So it's hard to think of pulling the plug. We actually have a band meeting tomorrow night for the Shanks because we haven't seen each other in a while, and I'm half afraid that Dan or Jen's going to be like, "Yeah, we're breaking up. Like we're not playing." I'm like, "No, no, we need to play." I know they won't because we're halfway through a new record, but like I will say that I like the pace of it now. We're like play 10 times a year. Like every month or so, every 6 weeks, I get up on stage and plug in my bass and play. Like I I can't imagine not doing it. I really can't.
There's a lot of excitement around every show that you guys do.
Yeah, and it's just like making music with people that you like, and there's invariably people in the audience who are friends of mine that I've been friends with since I was a kid. Like I'd rather do that than play golf or play poker. Like, it's like it's a great thing. I feel really lucky to still be able to do it.
Yeah, I don't mean to make it sound like this is you're coming to the end, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious how you want to be remembered for your career in music and what kind of legacy you hope to leave behind in terms of everything you've done. Because you've done a lot, Lee.
Well, I mean, I think my place with Dave and Mike, and then Carl later, like, that's musically, like, I think that's the most important thing. And I know this sounds really corny, but mostly I'd like to be remembered as like a good guy. Like, and I feel like I've made connections with people all through the years. I'd like to be, think someone's like, oh yeah, I hung out with him in the dressing room at the Rat. He was a good guy. He was funny. He, seemed like a decent guy. Like to me, that's the biggest thing. It's like, I feel like it's the only thing we take out. It's like the personal connections we make with people. Like the rest of it's all just like, I don't care what kind of car you drive or what your house, like, tell me what people think of you. And like, I'd like to think that that would be my legacy.
I think you're passing that test just fine, Lee. I was thinking before I started talking to you that every time I've ever seen or talked to you, which is many, many times, you always pretty much have the same temperament and you've always been the same. You don't like get too high and you don't get too low. You stay right in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have my days, but yeah, for the most part, I feel. I mean, first of all, I feel really lucky. I had great parents. Obviously, my sisters I love. I had great extended
Do you
family.
really have them ranked in order, your sisters, or you
No,
just
I don't. People always try and trick me into doing it. I'm like, no. Um, I have wonderful children. I've had great experiences. Like I look back and think like, hopefully there's another 20 years to sort of figure other stuff out. But like, I feel like I've had a life well led for the most part. Yeah, ups and downs and blah blah blah. But like on balance, like I feel pretty lucky. I feel like I feel pretty blessed.
and I feel lucky to have known you, man. Thank you so
I got you,
much.
brother. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, brother.